Aloha, you lovely human being. So today we are going to dive into day 21 of the 30-day journey to 30 by rounding out creativity. We've already covered enchantment and tenacity, and today we're going to cover a concept that kind of connects both of those together. Specifically connecting the words, there you go, specifically connecting vulnerability with divinity. And I know those seem like very contradicting, not even contradicting, just like not connected words. But they connect when you come to the concept of joy. Yeah. So today we're going to dive into joy, and we're going to explore the concepts of vulnerability and joy and divinity and joy. So right off the bat, I'm assuming that you are like me and you're like, well, yeah, divinity and joy make sense. If you believe in a God, if you believe in a heaven, that's probably the most overwhelming feeling you get when you are in the divine is joy. Just an overwhelming sense of joy. Like we literally won't be able to contain, like according to the Bible, we won't be able to contain our singing. That's how freaking joyful we're going to be. So joyful and divine, that makes sense. Joyful and vulnerable? Good question. I'm glad you asked. So this clicked for me when I was watching a Netflix segment, a talk that Brene Brown put up on Netflix. I highly recommend it. It's fabulous, 100%. If you're familiar with her work, just letting you know there's a talk on Netflix and you should go watch it. But there was something in there that she said that really made this topic click for me. And it was a sentence. She said, without vulnerability, there is no creativity. And I was like, ding, 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 perfect. I wrote that down. And then when I took a step back from that statement, in regards to her entire talk, I realized that she brought that up in her segment about joy. And she mentioned that joy is actually one of the most vulnerable feelings that we feel. And I know that might not ring, like that doesn't click right away, like joy. No, I want to feel joy. That's not vulnerable to feel joy. Oh, but it is. Because how many of you have experienced foreboding joy, right? So it's one of Brene Brown's example is when you are like standing in the doorway of your kid's room, if you're a parent, and you're watching over your child and they're just asleep, and it's just this overwhelming sense of love and compassion for this child. And then what's the next step? Immediately something negative. Immediately, like, my child is going to die one day. My child is going to get in a horrific accident. Like, almost immediately it is followed up by that. Or another way to think of it is if you're not a parent and maybe you're like sitting back on your couch one day, you've got a glass of wine, if that's your thing, and you're like, oh, life is good. Like, life is good. Work is going good. My family life is going good. I have the friends that I need. Life is going good. Shit. It's that immediately follow up of like, this cannot be true. Like, something is going to happen. That's called foreboding joy, because we often don't let ourselves feel that emotion. We don't let ourselves really feel into feeling good. And I'm sure this has to do with like evolution. Like back in the day, if you got too comfortable in your hut, you were going to get eaten by a tiger. Like, you had to be on the lookout. You had to be aware of like, well, things are too good right now. Let's make sure and stay alert. Nowadays, we don't really have to do that, but our brain still goes there. Our brain still goes to foreboding joy. Another concept that Brene Brown brought up that like moves us from a little bit of the vulnerability into divinity is recognize that a lot of times we're chasing the extraordinary and missing the ordinary, right? And this goes back to concepts that we've kind of covered in enchantment and tenacity, that a lot of creativity is just the day in, out, something that you do every day. It's those moments that like, it's those ordinary moments that actually have more magic than the extraordinary moments. And if we just let ourselves appreciate the everyday ordinary, life can feel extraordinary. right? But a lot of times we're chasing the extraordinary and completely missing it because it's actually in that ordinary kind of lifestyle, or is in those ordinary moments. But the biggest concept with joy, especially when it comes to vulnerability, is this idea that Brene Brown said, and I believe I've already mentioned it, but without vulnerability, there is no creativity. Like, if we can't be vulnerable, if we can't decide to eventually just start putting ourselves out there, if we can't show up daily doing something, creativity isn't going to happen. We have to be willing to be vulnerable, and we have to be willing to find the joy in the everyday mundane things. That's what this is about. And then divinity, to keep this kind of short, divinity is just kind of like what we've already talked about, all of the stuff that we've already talked about, that it is finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. It's finding the enchantment in our everyday lives. It's finding the overwhelming happiness in our slog of everyday life, and recognizing that it is the everyday life that is like amazing. And if you're willing to show up, if you're willing to create, if you're willing to put yourself out there, you're better than like 95% of us. So anyways, before I go off on that tangent, I wanted to end by sharing the in conclusion of Big Magic, because this really summarizes all of the concepts that we've talked about so far with creativity, especially because I know I've been pretty organized so far, but with creativity, there was just so many topics that I wanted to fit in this, and a lot of those topics with creativity are kind of paradoxical. They're kind of opposites: enchantment, tenacity, giving yourself permission and having persistence, and finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. And it's those flashes of light, but it's doing it daily. It's a lot of that, this and that, this and that. So in conclusion, creativity is sacred, and it is not sacred. What we make matters enormously, and it doesn't matter at all. We toil alone, and we are accompanied by spirits. We are terrified, and we are brave. Art is a crushing chore and a wonderful privilege. Only when we are at our most playful can divinity finally get serious with us. Make space for all of these paradoxes to be equally true inside your soul, and I promise you can make anything. So please calm down now and get back to work, okay? The treasures that are hidden inside you are hoping you will say yes. I love that. The treasures inside of you are hoping that you will say yes. So again, I know we've covered quite a bit in this concept of creativity, enchantment, tenacity, joy, but it does come back down to the question that I asked at the very beginning. The universe has hidden strange, beautiful, precious jewels inside of you, and you're only going to discover them if you commit to something daily and you're actually willing to explore and create and do something with them. Are you going to answer that call? Are you going to live a life of enchantment? Are you going to be tenacious? Are you going to let yourself experience joy in all the creative ways that you can possibly experience joy? This is your one great life. This is your one great life, and the treasures that are hidden inside you are hoping you will say yes. Yeah. Okay. So that rounds out creativity. I'm going to be back here tomorrow as we look at the next C, the sixth C. That was fun to say. Sixth C. Say that 5 times fast. Say that 6 times fast. So the sixth C we're going to dive into tomorrow is consciousness. And I look forward to seeing you there. I hope you have an amazing day.